Guess who? Lily and Michaela Orchard. Maybe politics as fandom wasn't a good idea. I have been seeing people talk about this video, but I haven't done a politics stream in like a week, so it seems like it's passed us by. But why not, right? Why not? We're gonna look at it. Let's dive in. Here we go, everybody. Stay sane.
Like, let's be honest, hypothetical Voshite in the comments, hurriedly tabbing away from AO3's race play tag. Hey, AO3, why do you have this? Were you really alt-right? Were you at Charlottesville? Were you stalking people on Kiwi farms? Were you retweeting libs of TikTok as she threatened child hospitals? Were you the one threatening children's hospitals? Were you actively pedo-jacketing trans women? Or did you just scroll through Twitter nodding along with edgelords? No, Bonnie, we're not doing that today. Put the regular music back on. Don't give me that look, just do it.
Man, this is like the most grating tonality that I've ever experienced from a YouTuber. Of course, Natalie has to be in it. Why wouldn't she?
I made a video about the then topical controversy surrounding ContraPoints freely working with violent bigots and getting really sniffy when other trans people thought that was a bad idea. Now, ContraPoints got in trouble at least twice after that, and there was a big blow up when Lindsay Ellis got in trouble for being really sniffy about people complaining about a racist take and rage quit her job. But I never made
Oh, the racist take being that she thought Raya and the Last Dragon was like Avatar: The Last Airbender. A thing that a lot of other people believed and didn't get called out for believing because it's kind of fair. Yeah, Lindsay talks about this in one of her videos. I'm not gonna go like hard defending her here. Not really the point. But like Lily Orchard's like that, you know. She likes slipping little things in there, where you know maybe if you're just already drinking, you'll just swallow that uncritically. You know, it just goes down easy. But if you're actually stopping to think for a second, it's like, wait a minute, hang on. No, I don't think so. Like when the agents are shooting at Neo at the end of the Matrix and he just goes, no.
made videos after that, despite people in my audience wanting me to. And the reason for that is that this video was the culmination of a lot of frustration with someone I had thought was a progressive ally, whereas all the instances that came later didn't have that same frustration because I no longer felt that either of these people, or any of the people getting in trouble since then, were anything other than performers. So let's talk about that. So back in 2019, there was a storm in a teacup and ContraPoints did a video with Buck Angel, a notorious trans medicalist. This was coming off the heat of several years of ContraPoints engaging in what I like to call J.K. Rowling politics, where she views conservatives as sincere but wrong and progressives as dishonest and hiding an agenda. I feel it's a little more nuanced than that, Lil. Yeah, but that's the general gist of it, otherwise...
That's not the general gist of it at all, dude. Natalie's talked about fascists being liars and has portrayed, I think, in some ways, left-wingers as being maybe a little hyperbolic and silly at worst, maybe unrealistic, because she is, I think, a liberal. This says here, and we'll just read this long version. ContraPoints is a nominally progressive centrist. I think liberal would be the term that I would use. And an inherent ideological flaw of centrism is that to be a centrist, you have to think the left and the right are both wrong. This is completely all in her mind, by the way. This is all in Lily Orchard's imagination. Just the projector is rolling. But because the left is mostly right on damn near everything, not that you would know, Lily, and no amount of honest research will ever change that, a common way to decry the left without being immediately debunked is to claim that they don't actually believe the things they say. Dude, complete projection. Come on. This is all in her imagination. This, honestly, you really missed your calling as like a weird, like, post-left podcaster. With the way these takes are formulated. They don't believe the things they're saying and are actually paying lip service in the name of a completely different agenda, drawing comparisons to Lenin, Stalin, Zedong, people usually say Mao, but whatever, and other oligarch leaders who use socialist language to take... I don't know if oligarch leaders is how... Listen, I'm not a defender of any of these. Like, I'm not their strongest soldier. I'm not Stalin's strongest soldier or anything. Oligarch leaders might not be the way that I would have phrased that. Who use socialist language to take power. Pop culture is also fond of this approach to progressives and loves to make progressive villains who turn out to be liars. This is just about Legend of Korra! God damn it! Literally name-dropping Legend of Korra. I can't believe you managed to make this video also about Legend of Korra. Oh my god. I'm actually speechless. Oh my god, turn out to be liars all along, like Korra, Marvel, Harry Potter, Ruby, and we'd be here for hours if I went through the whole list. I don't really think that's true of Ruby, is it? Is it? Oh, I guess like the White Fang, but I don't really think that's how I'd characterize the White Fang and Ruby. You know, I think that they're like supposed to be like action for action's sake, but like if that was what the Black Panthers were like, it's like you know, that liberal like caricature that some like kind of racist white liberals have of Malcolm X, where it's like MLK, he was the good one because he was more moderate and he was reasonable and he wanted to do things peacefully, but Malcolm X, he was too extreme, you know, which is just like nonsense. But it is kind of like what the White Fang are and how they're portrayed to have been in the past versus the present, you know, their old leadership versus new leadership in Ruby, if you actually look at it textually. So that I could see calling it kind of like a weird historical or racial parallel. But I don't, progressive villains who turn out to be liars all along, I think the White Fang are portrayed as like not really having anything redeeming about them except that they kind of don't like racism. But they're basically evil and they love being evil. And that's kind of the problem, actually, is that that's the element of the caricature that's really sinister. So this is like not understanding even the thing that she's criticizing. We'd be here for hours if I went through the whole list, and we're gonna be.
Otherwise, we'd be here all day. While the version of this story Wynn's remaining fanbase tends to go with is that she was cancelled for a single mistake, people had been growing increasingly discontented with her for a long time. And the problem is that we all just ostensibly assumed that because she was a trans woman, that she was as much of a true lefty socialist as the rest of us.
Why is this video hang on, I have to complain. Why is this video even about her? Why is this even in, like, you have to shoehorn the 2-minute ContraPoints hate at the beginning of the video. That's so hacky. Oh my god. Like, it's genuinely just completely hacky. I don't even know what else to say. I can't possibly say anything nice about it. And I don't agree with everything Natalie has said. I don't even necessarily know that I agree with all the takes in her videos, you know? I certainly think her stances and ideas about a lot of things and her feelings about a lot of stuff has developed over time. And she's acknowledged that. Some things that she was, I'll just use the word canceled for, whatever, I think it was unfair. Some things I think would be a fair point of disagreement. It's just that the response was a little disproportionate, which happens a lot if you're a content creator. I don't know,
that she wasn't. And this has been a recurring theme regarding much of BreadTube for a long time. BreadTube was viewed as this resurgence of left-wing YouTube in the face of a rising issue of right-wing debate bro channels. This happened because they started out with making fun of the likes of Davis Arini, Thunderfoot, and Sargon of Akkad, who were relatively easy targets for anyone to make fun of.
Oh, of course he has a trilby, of course. Why wouldn't he? I mean, what else would you hang on your novelty toy skull? $15,000?
Now, I feel like I and the rest of my video-watching compatriots kind of jumped the gun. Making fun of conservatives is easy. Hell, conservatives could make fun of conservatives before they all got obsessed with things getting woke. This wasn't a difficult thing to do, and while a handful of BreadTubers have largely stayed on the path of leftist politics, those tend to be the ones for whom they were a genuinely held passion. But even they aren't immune to criticism, and even they don't have perfect leftist theory.
H-Bomb does a lot of media takes now these days. That's a lot of what he does, media critique.
LeftTube was similar to the cartoon community.
Does it better,
YouTube,
too.
It's a relatively niche environment with only a handful of standouts. There can only be one H-Bomber guy or Phantom Strider, and the rest mostly Millivow picking up the scraps. And I say this as a proud scrap picker myself. But what inevitably happens when a community of content creators establishes itself is that everyone comes in looking for their little piece of the clout pie. There's a common discussion nowadays regarding debating the alt-right, or rather, just the right. People will say that it helps debunk conservative thought, but that's always been a very tenuous leg to stand on. It's what conservatives used to say about debating feminists and what atheists used to say about debating creationists. You can't destroy a school of thought by owning one guy with facts and logic. If you could, they would have died out a long time ago. It's that old Steven Universe problem where you have an extremely simplistic solution to a problem, and yet you simultaneously believe it's so complicated that you're the first person to think about it. Ben Shapiro is not the supreme leader of fascism, but that doesn't stop everyone debating him 17 times a day. Why? Because it's easy. It's easy.
Well, I mean, I don't really think that's why. I think people debate Ben Shapiro so much because that's actually what his platform is predicated on. Ben Shapiro actively seeks out like Q&As and talks and engagements with people who are, you know, usually kind of young, usually kind of progressive, don't have a lot of media training. This is the Steven Crowder move, you know? Like, these guys would get shredded if they were debating people who were professionals, you know? And I'm not talking about people like Vosh. I'm talking about like the Crowder Cedar debate, you know? There's a reason why Steven Crowder's dad tells him not to debate Sam Cedar. People are going to say that's a conspiracy. I think we all know who's pulling the strings there. Come on. No, there's a reason why. It's not a good look for him. I don't know. I don't in typical Lily Orchard fashion, this is like complete projection that completely undercuts the actual reason that people like the stuff that they like when it comes to the content of guys like Vosh. I don't think that Vosh thinks that the right wing will be destroyed by debating them out of existence. I don't think he's ever espoused that, and I don't even know if anybody beyond like Thunderfoot himself genuinely believed that. I mean, maybe like Dawkins is stupid enough to believe that about like the atheists and the creationists and stuff, but I don't think that that's like what a lot of atheists' goal was, you know? I think to a certain degree they wanted, like, for example, I remember one thing that used to get a lot of play among atheists before things got kind of twisted into a different political landscape. One idea that used to get a lot of play is like school curriculum, that like this idea of teaching the controversy in young earth creationism versus the theory of evolution is usually how they frame it. That idea is fundamentally a privileging of like reactionary, conservative, and unscientific thought. It like creates misleading school environments where teachers just lie to children, and it's a conservative agenda. It's a right-wing conservative Christian agenda. That, in and of itself, that it's an agenda of lies, is probably the problem, and I think changing that curriculum was a good idea, and a lot of atheists used to espouse something similar to that. I don't think that they all thought that creationists were going to be ended by debating them. I still think they sought out the debates for, you know, the reason that atheists were, and still are, a minority in America in a lot of ways. So, you know, seeking public engagement can be a good thing for them, for visibility. And I think for, you know, socialism or communism, this is also in some ways the case. I think it's a little different than what Vosh does. I don't think it's that different, but, you know, case by case, again. I don't really see what the point of invoking that is there. This is like classic Lily, right? Because you take something that even if Vosh believes it, you have no reason to believe that he believes it. So it's just like, oh, conservatives aren't going to be ended. The right won't be ended by debating them. Do you think that he has said that? Do you think he believes that? Like, why would you think that he believes that? Why do you think that he has held that position? You know, why are you assigning that to him rhetorically here? Or why are you behaving as if that's something that he thinks? This is a mark of intellectual dishonesty that you're just going to like constantly frame things this way. And it's Lily Orchard, so come on, this is good. I don't want to poison the well too much, but we're like 4 minutes in, you know? It's not going to get that much better, I don't think. The next 20 minutes are going to be hell.
Easy content. It's an easy content farm. You don't have to do much, and you don't have to be very smart. And that's the debate.
Oh my, Lily, you criticize I'm sorry. You criticize children's cartoons. Like, yeah, it's an easy content farm. You don't have to do much, and you don't have to be smart. Which you don't, and you aren't. Like, please, dude, glass houses. Like, come on. We should aspire to greater things, but like, come on. Let's. I don't understand. Like, this is ludicrous.
Grift. It's always been the debate bro grift. But the problem is that any audience who
I don't
likes
think that's a
debates
grift.
as
I think it's
won't stick around for the same easy
type of
targets, so
content.
instead they have to make more reaches. Ian Kaczynski made a name for himself debating the alt-right in an extremely edgy fashion, utilizing slurs and large screaming declarations. But as his audience became increasingly bored of it, he had to branch out. The problem was he didn't really have a praxis outside of class reductionism and calling people Nazis, and when he did branch out, he ended.
Oh my god, we're just using buzzwords. On what grounds is Vosh class? Of all the things you could say, like, okay, is it bad to say slurs? Sure, we'll just hand that one off. I'm not even gonna fight that. Like, but class reductionism, that's Vosh like rails against those people. This is, again, you have no idea what you're talking about. No effort is on display here. You're not using your brain. Come on, the guy talks about intersectionality all the time, you know? And whether you think he gets it right or wrong is one thing. Sure, right? You could say that. You could then go to that and be like, here's how Vosh doesn't understand this or that, or here's how I know that he's wrong about this or that, whatever. But to be like, he's just out of the gate, he's a class reductionist, no elaboration, seemingly. I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out, I guess. This is not a very long section on Vosh. It goes for like the next minute and a half, but
ended up just calling people Nazis. Any concept that was more complicated to him than Nazis bad, working class good would inevitably be filtered through increasingly unhinged hypotheticals to worm the subject back to that.
Wait, what? Pro tips for life: not everyone who tells you to care about racism is a... What? Impenetrable. I don't even know what she means by this.
Accusations of white genocide at a black woman sight unseen for arguing about land back, which is the return of stolen land to indigenous people, which, if you live in the United States or Canada right now, is the land currently under your feet. This has been a running problem with Ian in that when it comes to white people, he wants all that ooh democratic socialism, but when it comes to anyone else,
listen, I've talked about this before. I was empathetic to Professor Flowers in that initial exchange, for sure, because she was in an impossible situation as somebody who was espousing what's the phrase? NatLib, National Liberation. Sorry. A little slow today, guys. I apologize. As somebody who espouses that, right? You're in a tough situation because people are going to ask you questions, right? That are essentially also the questions that an interventionist would ask you. So I can understand why people had a certain reaction to Vosh asking those questions, again, for sure. This idea that, oh, well, should these countries have the right, very, very shaky grounding there already, to commit a genocide within their borders, right? Are they entitled to do that? A different question. To turn around and say yes or no puts you in a bad spot. If you say yes, it sounds like you're just pro-genocide, you're just pro-bad things, you just like murder. If you say no, it sounds like you're not really fully nat-lib and you do believe that like stronger nations should paternalistically shoulder check their way into other countries to control for different outcomes. And neither of these are great positions to espouse context-free, right? Yeah, I'm not saying like never knock down a foreign government, right? Like obviously the historical Nazi party had to go, of course. But at the same time, the way that this gets framed in the context of human rights in international discussions can be manipulated. And we know this. So it's a fraught issue, for sure. And I respected that she was in a tough spot. I don't think she handled it particularly well. And I don't think saying that is particularly controversial. Framing it this way is confusing to me, because it makes it sound like Lily just genuinely wants you to think that Vosh was like, man, I really want to yell at a black woman today. Are there any black women around that I can just hate for a minute? And this is like a lack of theory of mind in politics. You can't possibly genuinely think, I mean, maybe you are that dumb, that Vosh or anybody would sincerely think that, like, that's the level that they're operating on. The human mind is so much more colorful and nuanced than that. You're not at all getting into what he must have been thinking in that scenario. You're just imagining that he's Jefferson Davis and rolling with that because it kind of broad strokes affirms your appraisal of the situation. That's not analysis. You're not really engaging, You're not even engaging with a hypothetical of Vosh. You're just constructing a very thin cardboard hypothetical and just going, yeah, he's basically like that, and then rolling with it. Which, to complain earlier, you brought up like feminism as far as like, implicit in the discussion about class reductionism, but there was also that stuff about the internet atheists and debate bros and stuff like that. To have these kinds of conversations, like, I don't know, it feels like a disservice immediately to your audience to talk like this about this stuff. Maybe I'm a little out of pocket saying that. I don't know. People can tell me.
Really all about mass ethnic cleansing. Jewish people living on stolen land and doing ethnic cleansing, he wants to nuke the civilians. White people living on stolen land and doing ethnic cleansing, well, stopping him from doing that is hurting him specifically, so he doesn't like that. This class...
I don't think Vosh actually wants to genocide the civilian population of Israel. He made a comment once, an offhanded, hyperbolic comment that got him banned from Twitch. I don't think that's fair. Come on. Like, let's chill. And again, like, this is... This might actually be a genuine case of bad faith. This might genuinely be a case of Lily Orchard taking a position that she is holding specifically for the purpose of attacking along a certain line. Because I have to ask myself, does Lily Orchard genuinely believe that Vosh believes that? Or is she saying that because it's convenient for this argument? And I have to think that, on the whole, there's too many instances already 5 minutes in of things like this in that video for it to all be sincere. She'd have to be completely in her own world. And maybe she is that delusional, I don't know. But some of it feels like it's fabricated a little bit, you know, propped up.
For socialism has always been extremely vulnerable to this kind of white supremacist thinking. And make no mistake, Ian is a white supremacist. You can make all the ooh-woo wise of the proletariat speeches you want, accusing people of color of wanting to genocide white people, or suggesting that there's merit to the conspiracy theory that Jewish people control global banking is pretty fucking telling.
If you're too young, those are both things she did.
Okay. Again, like, I don't know, not even a clip, Chimp, dude. This is, yeah, come on. I hate to pause like every 5 seconds, but, you know, sources, they're anathema to Lily Orchard. Frankly, I think that this is just out of pocket. People making content like this, by the way, about Vosh, was one of the things that gave me a bad impression of him, like, man, like 3-4 years ago now. People talking about him like that, as far back as that. Yeah, like three and a half years ago. That's how I had a poor appraisal of him, just through the grapevine, you know? I mean, that's kind of gotta suck. It's a little bit of it, you know, with like saying the N-word to like some Nazis on stream. You know, obviously to make a point, but even so, just by the fact of doing that, a little bit one brings it on oneself with that. But also, to be fair, the obsession is out of proportion no matter how you slice it. It reminds me a lot of that, I can't believe I'm saying this. It reminds me a lot of that Zizek quote about anti-Semitism and the Nazis, and about, you know, which, by the way, was part of the point that Vosh was making in that discussion with non-compete, which Lily Orchard is referencing by proxy, but not actually citing. If you go and you watch the whole thing on Vosh's end, he talks about what he meant when he said that, which was that if these things are true, which you can find examples of them which make them seem like they're true from the perspective of like the way that Nazis post about them, which he would know, right? Like, he is aware of that. Then you can't simply make a moral argument in favor of the Holocaust on those grounds. Because the problem is not that the stuff in, like, a bunch of the stuff in the Protocols of the Elders of Zion is just like fake made up nonsense for baby brain losers. It's not the only problem, right? Even if like Judaism was kind of bad, the Holocaust is still wrong. Even if that was true, even if some of the stuff that they said about the Jews was true, the Holocaust is still bad. It's still wrong, you know? And Vosh was making this point in the context of non-compete, just like egregiously through this haphazard and goofy misunderstanding of Marx, completely not understanding what it means to have any ethical evaluation via like a normative moral system. Normative ethics, I believe is the phrase. Yeah, it's messy, but it reminds me a lot of that, because another thing that Zizek says that Vosh makes reference to, I believe on that same stream, is even if some of the stuff that people say about, you know, like let's give another example that isn't like a racial example. I'll change some of the particulars. Like, let's say that you've got a guy and he's your friend and he's really paranoid about his girlfriend cheating on him. And you know, right, that he's been cheated on before. It's happened to him once or twice. However, the level of his paranoia is so deranged that he is starting to mistreat people around him and just behave in these erratic, out of proportion ways. The paranoia might be based on a real thing that happened to him, I mean, maybe it turns out actually in the end that the story that he told you about his ex cheating on him was also a lie, and you go, oh, it wasn't based on anything real. But if he's not lying, and it is a real story that he told you about being cheated on, and that's why he's paranoid about it, the paranoia in and of itself is not necessarily justified by the reality of the example. And I merely submit for all of you who are viewing this, the obsession with Vosh as another example of this exact type of thing. Has he done some bad stuff? No, I'm not going to fight you on it, but I'm not going to fight you on it. It's, buddy, whatever. But the obsession is next level. And you have to wonder what the purpose of that is, right? I'm not insisting on a conspiracy here, by the way. I'm just saying, at an individual level, what is the function and what is the purpose of being this obsessed about this dude? I have a meme that I post occasionally. It's a clip from the Boondocks. I'm going to paraphrase it here for that reason. And I started thinking to myself, man, what did he do to make them that mad? And, like, it's just the thought that I have, you know, because I'm familiar with some of the controversies Vosh has been involved in. The response is out of proportion. The obsession is out of proportion. I think probably obsession with an e-celeb is always out of proportion. To be this obsessed and this hateful to the point where Lily Orchard deleted, I believe, a post on her Tumblr, which some people have screenshotted and shared around, where she advocated murdering Vosh. To have that level of obsession, I'm sorry, man. You're out of your mind. Take it down a notch. You're at like a 20. I need you at like a 5. You know? It only goes up to 10. Chill.
Ian is a grifter. He does all of this for content and money. He isn't very smart. He isn't politically motivated. And he's a very emotionally stunted white man with all of the opinions of someone who didn't get beaten up enough in high school. But because he sometimes said...
Lily, like 5 of those 7 things are true of you. Come on. Let's... Again, glass houses. With the fucking painting of Marx, Jesus Christ.
Words that would have been considered radical back in the Gilded Age, he got to enjoy a position of clout among the rest of LeftTube, who have largely ignored his fascist leanings. I have always been a big proponent of understanding the difference between stated politics and actual politics. Ian's Wikipedia page has to clarify his politics as self-described left-wing. That's how bad he is at being left-wing. We all just have to take his word for it most of the time. Give people enough time, they'll show you who they are. You just have to stop ignoring it. See, the thing about ContraPoints is flagrant courting of...
I think Wikipedia does that with a lot of people, but alright.
People pushing for visibility as radicals is that ContraPoints was...
It's like I think the people who edit Wikipedia are aware that there are constantly debates about the true political leanings of political figures, especially contemporary figures whose lives are still ongoing, you know? So it's more concrete to make a note of how somebody describes themselves. Whatever, dude. We're skipping over so much.
What a lot of breadtubers do. Positioning where she was politically, philosophically, and socially as the Overton window, and everything to the left of her as radicals and hyper-woke. And she ultimately refuses to budge from there. This is the fundamental problem of most of breadtube. They position where they are as peak leftism, and everything else is either the far right or a woke distraction.
Come on, dude. You're just making this stuff up. If you showed a clip, Lily, where it was like Natalie saying for like a minute or something, where she was like, I think that I'm really like the middle of the political spectrum, and everybody to the left of me is crazy, and everybody to the right of me is a bigot, but the center is really where we should all be. If you find me that clip, then yeah, that's dumb, but like, please.
Many of them are only tenuous.
Save my brain.
Many of them hold far-right views, but they also don't like capitalism. Indeed, much of breadtube is of the opinion that opposing capitalism is the only real leftist priority and everything else is a distraction, which doesn't work because any leftist policy that doesn't prioritize anti-racism is just conservatism with a hammer and sickle. And the crux of the response to most of the criticism of
left-tubers constantly rage against people who aren't like feminist enough or anti-racist enough, and you know, fair, but like they're constantly making content about it. Not really rage content all the time, but they're constantly talking about it. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What reality are you living in?
ContraPoints was
I'm just gonna
largely
let it
people
go. I'm just gonna let it
telling
go. I'm
ContraPoints
just
that
gonna
she
let it
needs to
go.
start
I'm
caring
getting
about how other people think and feel, and ContraPoints going,
Like, I don't wanna, you know?
this was someone who, like Ian, was largely only leftist because we assumed this of her, and even she would contest that and say, nah, I'm like more of a centrist. And a lot of her more out there videos, particularly Envy, came off more and more like she was superimposing her own experiences with gender and capitalism onto everybody. This is clearly a woman who has developed a taste for the finer things in life and generally wants to be a part of upper society. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Socialism has long had to contend with the fact that a lot of people in it just want to have the means to survive, while a lot of other people look on at the wealthy with
Wait, whoa, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Where is this going?
envy. But that latter group is never going to be happy because that opulent wealth just can't exist without an exploitative system to surround it. Socialism isn't about making everyone wealthy, it's about making everyone stable. But this
Wait, hang on. No, that's not what the word inherently means. If it can't exist without it, then there is something inherently. If you've got a thing and it can't exist without an evil component, like you've got a plane and the fuel for the plane is actually like an evil little man in the back of the plane who pedals like Fred Flintstone, and every time he pedals, like 1 million people die. You can't just like you can't be like, well, the plane's not inherently evil. It's literally runs on murder. What are you talking about? This is not even internally consistent. This doesn't even make sense internal to Lily's own statements.
Approach to wealth and opulence is a blinder, especially if you make a 6-figure salary. This is doubly so for gender. Like every wannabe philosopher,
I'm mad that
ContraPoints
other
tends to
people
assume
have
that
money.
there's a
Please give me the money
philosophical
instead.
reason
I'd like
in
the money.
non-binary people's existence because, well, she's got a lot of deep-seated contradictory feelings about gender. Surely everyone does. This rather infamous clip is rather telling in that regard.
So the blunt thing to do here is easy. If someone asks you to call them they, you call them they.
Uh-huh.
But if you're like me, you don't want to just do a thing because you dogmatically believe it's the woke thing to do.
God,
Okay, hang on, wait.
you're pretentious. The truth
Wait, hang on. It's pretentious to say that you shouldn't just be dogmatic? I guess that makes sense. Lily Orchard is just Dogma the person, so that's fair. You probably only are woke on any issue because of the dogma of it, you know? Like, that's probably the only reason you're ever right about anything. I actually have to give credit where credit is due. There's a certain amount of knowing that she's being attacked there and just resisting it. Like, I kind of respect it, you know? That's like if that's like Hitler in his bunker having 1 bullet left and being like, no, I'm gonna fight the Soviets off. Dude.
Here's some money.
I thank you, obscure leftist, for the very generous $5. That's very cool. I appreciate it. Also, the Family Guy clip that rules.
Truth of the matter is that using someone's pronouns doesn't really have a why outside of because I said so. It's like asking the reason you should use someone's name. I'm a proponent of what I call totalitarian gender. Essentially, someone's gender, name, pronouns, etc. aren't up for debate. They are for an individual to dictate on whatever weird whims they desire. If they want their pronoun to be anomaly, then anomaly pronoun is anomaly.
Okay, hang on. This is... I understand, but, like, this also isn't a socially functional way of talking to other human beings. You can't just get into fisticuffs every time you disagree with another human, or you live in, like, Mad Max territory. At some point, you have to talk to people like they're people, you know? And I do believe in resisting transphobia. I'm not, like... This is a very edgy bit of text on screen. I'm not gonna fight it, though, you know? Like, I understand... Without condoning or condemning, I understand. My problem is more so, like... Sometimes in life, people will not understand you. And so it does kind of help to have a why. It does kind of help to be able to relate to them in the way that they will be able to make sense of. You know? This is just like, do you ever go outside and talk to other human beings? You know? I guarantee Lily is not like knocking the teeth out of everybody who's ever misunderstood her in public. Or she just never goes outside. It's one or the other. I mean, it's... You'd be in prison, you know? Like, you can't just get into that many, like, goofy, meaningless scuffles over what are, in a lot of people's minds, like, kind of minor, like, weird disputes that they have. And they don't understand, you know? My thought on people who don't understand my gender a lot of the time is, like, they don't know what they're doing, you know? And maybe that sounds condescending, but I have to be a little condescending or I'd be fighting all the time, you know? I have to think sometimes that I know better, because if I don't kind of think that I know better and talk to people a little bit like they're children, the alternative is just fighting them on everything. And, no, right? You literally can't live this all the time. I'm sure this sounds great to the 15-year-olds who subscribe to your YouTube channel, or to the 30-year-olds who never go outside, but somewhere in that zone, in between those two things, is like a happy medium of like person who's really online but does also know how to talk to people like they're people some of the time. And maybe what Natalie said would intuitively make sense to them and would not come off as like some rage-inducing, I don't know, thing you would... there's got to be a word for that. Like, it's not even bait, because it's completely sincere, but it does bait all the worst people. There's got to be a word for that. I don't know.
Discussion. In that framework, the only reason why you're using they, them pronouns for someone is because it's polite and there is literally nothing else to call them. And there really isn't a deeper reason for that. There might be to that person, but you shouldn't need that explanation and you aren't owed it. Cis people don't have to justify their own existence like this. The gender binary isn't this all-encompassing thing. Really, only Europe ever cared about it, and every other...
Okay, you aren't owed it. That's a good point, but allow me to retort. That's true, and yet sometimes people want to be understood, and Natalie is also speaking as a trans person, and I don't think that treating her as if she's somebody who like requires other people to explain their genders to her is fair, given that she literally just said she doesn't, but also she wants to be understood, and I think it's very human to want to be understood, and I think that's fine. You're just tilting at windmills here.
Culture had their own idea about gender in the first place. Thanks, colonialism. But gender as a construct has only ever been this important thing because cis people made it. And
that little thanks colonialism there, that's as deep as this video is going to get politically. Average breadtuber video.
Important thing. It's cis people having a huge bug up their ass about gender nonconformity in the first place that made gender a big deal. It's like that old question of, why is there gay pride but no straight pride? Because nobody's trying to kill you, that's why. Why is there Black Lives Matter but no White Lives Matter? Because nobody's trying to kill you, that's why. If they weren't trying to kill us, it wouldn't be a big thing. People would just be trans and that's it. It would be no more nuanced or complicated than,
do I want to be happy the rest of my life or miserable?
And this idea that there's more to it than just being polite to other human beings is a form of privilege. It's putting the existence of non-binary people up for debate. Even if you are
wanting to be understood is not a form of privilege. This is goofy. This is very... We're connecting so many wildly different dots. Charlie Kelly with the Pepe Silvio board here.
In favor of non-binary people, you shouldn't be having that debate with anyone at all. There shouldn't be an option to not be in favor of non-binary people. These are not people to be debated at all. This is not a position to be debated. My identity is not a democracy. It's not a matter of opinion. It is a totalitarian state. I will tell you what my name and pronouns are, and disagreement is not an option if you like having all of your teeth. And this is the case for everyone. Disagreement with an individual's identity.
Yeah, very keyboard warrior stuff here. I just gotta say, though, like, in life, sometimes people aren't gonna understand you, and you can be a child forever and just, like, swing your fist every time somebody doesn't get it, which, no, you don't, right? I don't believe you. Or, alternatively, you can look at some of this stuff and go, like, yes, I am willing to defend myself and my identity, but also, I, as a human being, long for connection with other people. I want that connection to be healthy, and so I'm going to reach out in a way that will, at least to my mind, repair that connection or give it opportunity to flourish. And yes, this may be a hostile environment for me where I am on the back foot as a member of the minority group. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's just what we're dealing with, right? I don't think that this is a very helpful mindset for people to adopt. In fact, it's actively toxic to yourself to act like talking to other people like they're human beings when they don't understand you, you know? Just saying like, oh, you're not owed an explanation. That's great. I think they know that. I think they want one anyway. You know? I think sometimes people will want to connect to you. And yeah, sure, you know, if Vosh has like some 17-year-old Nazi on his stream to like, you know, cry about trans rights or whatever, or some libs of TikTok type nonsense, sure, that person maybe is not super sincere, but it can be demonstrated using them as an interlocutor or a third party who might be, you know, a little bit more open-minded and a little bit less, you know, in one camp or the other than, you know, for example, a fascist might be. It can be demonstrated for them that there is room to connect with other people on this issue. I used to be a lot more like Lily Orchard, and I really detest that because, but it is personal growth to just look back on that and go, wow, this was like a really cringy, LARPy way of thinking about myself and about the world. But ultimately, it's more than anything else dysfunctional for your relationships to act like this. You know, I am sorry. It's not fair that you're in this scenario. It's not fair that we're in this scenario. But it is where we are. And so sometimes we will have to speak on uneven ground with people who don't understand us. And sometimes those people are not evil. They just don't get it. You know? This was a problem that I've had with a lot of cisgender people in my life. They will not understand. And I think, unfortunately, attitudes like Lily's here make those people who may, in good faith, just have a misunderstanding, afraid to come forward, right? Because they're afraid to say the wrong thing, because they're going to set you off, and they think you're going to be, you know, psychotic and swing on them because they say the wrong thing, or they're not really sure, or they don't get it, you know? This is not a normal response. Beyond, like, arguing from normality, because I don't actually want to do that. But beyond doing anything like that, it's not a constructive response. It's not a healthy response. Don't behave like this, please. Please stop.
Is not an opening for debate. It is not an opening for fierce opposition. They are not to be entertained. They are to be shunned and alienated entirely. There is no philosophical explanation for trans.
You can't, I'm sorry, you can't build your own society entirely out of people who already understand you if you're statistically and power-wise a minority group in society. It's not a viable option. This is leaning into, like, trans separatism. What are you going to do? Go build a commune with a bunch of other equally traumatized people who are going to turn on each other in 5 months? Come on. Oh, it could theoretically work, but come on. Be for real. You are not an island. You cannot be an island from society. It is unfortunate. It is not fair, but come on, be for real.
More nuanced than they exist. Their existence is not to be debated for sport. And that's what all of this is. It's sport. That's why breadtubers put so much stock in debating the alt-right, because that's their sport. Their audience isn't here for active participation in politics. They're here for professional wrestling. They're here to see people fight. They're here to see what stupid fucking costume they're gonna put on this time. And you know, that's fine if you remember what it is you're actually doing and what you're actually here for, and your political discussions are more esoteric and pie in the sky, like democratic socialism versus social liberalism, rather than debating people's inherent right to exist. Not every content creator is politically driven, even if their content is technically political, and their audience probably isn't either. When Ian gets in trouble for spewing white supremacist rhetoric for the 18th time that day, there's no shortage of people rushing to talk about how he de-radicalized them from the alt-right, but did he though? Like, let's be honest, hypothetical Voshite in the comments, hurriedly tabbing away from AO3's race play tag.
Hey, AO3, why do you have this?
Were you really alt-right? Were you at Charlottesville? Were you stalking people on kiwi farms? Were you retweeting libs of TikTok as she threatened child hospitals? Were you the one threatening children's hospitals? Were you actively pedo-jacketing trans women? Or did you just scroll through Twitter nodding along with edgelords? In my experience, nobody on the alt-right who was politically engaged were ever de-radicalized by BreadTube. They were passive, conservative, but probably couldn't be bothered to vote. Someone who might have voted for Trump, but their show was on that day, so And they were just as politically passive when they moved left. They changed none of their opinions. They didn't drop the edgelord bullshit about cancel culture. They didn't do anything. Maybe they whined on Twitter about woke scolds.
Well, so first of all, I just want to say that there might be a little, like, selection bias or something similar here, because I think somebody who did attend a hate rally, first of all, might be a little bit harder to get them to change. They might be in it a bit deeper, but if they did, they probably wouldn't go around telling you that they attended, like, Klan rallies and stuff like that. They probably wouldn't disclose that information because they understand correctly that they'd be ostracized for it, as you've advocated. So, like, this is not... See what I'm saying? Like, you're building a world where your own rhetoric, like, poisons you, you know? And your ability to interact with these people. It's... Don't drink the poison. Stop it. Stop it. Put it down. Put it down. Please. Please. Stop it. I just think that... And this is a weird characterization of BreadTube. acting very aloof from your footstool over there. I don't know. It's odd. It's very odd. We were talking earlier about like gender is enough for fun debate and what like some of the personal beliefs of these creators that you don't like are. And now we've transitioned from talking about like beliefs to talking about actions. What actions did these people take? And like, okay, but there is a recognition that people tend to sometimes believe messed up stuff politically before they take messed up actions politically. And so stopping them at the belief stage might be a little bit easier, and also might, ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure type of thinking might be a worthy goal in and of itself. And I don't know, if you look at yourself and you go, I used to have some racist beliefs, man, and I'm glad I don't anymore, and I appreciate all the people who helped me learn. Am I supposed to be like upset by that? Sounds fine. Sounds fine, I hope you're right about that. That sounds fine. No idea why we're angry about this. But I guess that's, a day ending in why.
Because woke scolds were making it harder to believe they were really shifting left, but to be de-radicalized, you had to have been radicalized in the first place. And if you were, actual de-radicalization takes way more therapy and way more self-reflection than watching a loser in his gaming chair scream at black women over opinions they never actually held.
All right, what is actual de-radicalization? I want to know what she means by that. Because if they have a position and the position changes, there you go, right?
Arg, me booty.
I don't know. It's a little odd. Thank you for the anonymous donation. I appreciate it. Very generous $10. I appreciate it. Very chill.
Breadtubers will claim to be recruiting, but aside from the fact that recruiting Nazis is completely counterproductive, they aren't recruiting for anything except their Patreons. This is not your political engagement, this is your entertainment. This is a borrowed observation from Signified B-Sides. You should definitely watch his videos.
The thing that debate fans don't want to admit is that this is their entertainment. They're trying to validate repeatedly debating insert white supremacists here for a week straight to say that's an important thing to do, when no, you just like wrestling. You just like professional wrestling. You just like soap operas.
This is true of all educational content on YouTube, though. Like, sure, one has like a little bit more kayfabe, but like, yeah, this is all it's an entertainment platform. Man, video essayists are really on their high horse about that stuff. I don't know, that's a like very clipped FD segment, so I'm not attributing this to him, but like obviously Lily is very much on her high horse. She lives there. She doesn't come down. She's got like the special like Bran Stark horse saddle. I don't know.
Everyone who claimed to be de-radicalized by BreadTube was honest with themselves and everyone else, they would respond to ContraPoints or Vosh posting a new video or stream with, "Oh, quiet everyone, Yana's gotta watch your stories," like my grandmother with Days of Our Lives, or my mother with Lois and Clark. They might like to believe that they're part of a leftist movement, but when was the last time they did anything that wasn't dogpiling someone on Twitter? Most likely over nothing. As much as many of these people talk about recruiting, they're not recruiting for anything but their own fan bases. While I compared them to the cartoon community, I find a better parallel is between BreadTube and psychology channels. While you can find resources and directions for psychology and therapy on YouTube, you will also find a lot of content farm clickbait doing little more than using the language of psychology for clicks, and especially drama channels who just want to call people sociopaths and armchair diagnose people they don't like.
Oh, somebody's mad.
Mad
about the TGT response.
BreadTube has the same dichotomy. There are card-carrying socialists, but there's also just a lot of edgelords cashing in on a trend, and a lot of actually hostile people who bully others for clout. But there's this real problem where if you expect a self-described socialist to uphold socialist ideals, you get called a woke scold and get dogpiled by Nazis. This isn't a tangible leftist movement, and I don't say that derisively. While LeftTube can occasionally do some real good, simply watching YouTubers, especially edgy brocialists who use radical politics as an excuse to avoid analyzing their ingrained biases, isn't going to make you into a good card-carrying leftist. It just feeds politics into the fandom cycle.
No, hang on. No. You don't want to be that. You don't want to be a good card-carrying leftist. That's not, I'm sorry, implicitly this is like set up like aspirationally. This isn't going to make you this thing. No, you don't want to be that. Stop it. You should want to be a person who believes correct things and wants to help people. There is not, as at this moment, like this major like left-wing populist movement that you could like very easily and accessibly like become a part of, and it would radically change like the world, or even just if we're talking about like my country, like America. This is not happening right now, right? So mostly people talk and they talk to each other, and they use social media to do that. Excuse me. And I don't see what the complaint is, other than there are probably some people who take it very self-seriously. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I don't think... Yeah, that's kind of problematic for, like, your mind state. But this is also just universally true across the board. And I think we can acknowledge that maybe it does make the world worse that conservatives push so much conservative content on social media. So ideally, inoculating people against that has like a hidden benefit. So, I don't know, two things could be true, but this is just weird. This is we're getting into like weirder and weirder territory as this video goes on.
Culture melts your brain, where you form parasocial relationships with political commentators. To bring this out into the real world, you should never get emotionally attached to a politician. They are disposable by nature. I didn't vote for the Liberal Party in the last 2 elections because of what nice, honest, moral people they were. They weren't. I voted for them because they mostly match my overall political goals. And unlike the
Canadian
others, capable of
Canuck
the Conservative Party from taking power and fucking everyone over. And yeah, my politics line up with the NDP way more than the Liberals, but the NDP spends so much time fucking around and engaging catty teenage bullshit and making themselves less and less electable. And if I were someone who cared about ideological purity and routinely called everything less than socialist than me neoliberal, I'd probably consider that a problem. But because I don't have an emotional attachment to politicians and I know what the actual positions of these parties are, it's much easier to make the more grown-up strategic decision. Politics and fandom should never...
It is weird, by the way, to cry like people who care about like ideological purity. But like earlier on, you were like, oh, taking pot shots at like brocialists this and breadtubers that, and oh, there are only but a few like true like card carrying like socialists or leftists, and it's like, what do you mean you don't care about ideological purity? People who say that are sus, dude. That's, first of all, everybody who conceives of themselves as a political radical cares about ideological purity. I think the issue is like social or historical purity. The idea that you have believed bad things in the past, that you are forever impure or marked in some way, that's problematic. But I think everybody doesn't like it when other people believe stupid, shitty stuff, especially if people's beliefs are of importance to you by virtue of like talking about them all the time. It's a weird point that people make. I don't understand.
And while BreadTube is mostly just politics as entertainment, it is increasingly breeding this self-centered, egotistical version of socialism in its viewers, simply by virtue of the fact that many card-carrying socialist content creators have inoculated their viewers to be violently opposed to anyone who pressures them to actually uphold socialist values. The end result is people who view politics not as a strategic move on a chessboard, but as a declaration of your own moral goodness. And this
so many
parasocial
levels of
relationship with
abstraction
political
away
commentators
from
goes both ways.
anything
Parasocial
real here.
hatred of these people is not useful in any way, shape, or form. It all creates engagement, especially for professional trolls. While I deeply dislike them, I can't summon the fire to be angry at creators like Contradiction, Nostalgia Chick, or Ian Learn to Shave. Couldn't even summon the energy to think of original insults there. Everything about them is so mundane, and their actions are so predictable, especially when they glommed onto the right...
It seems a little odd to say you can't summon the energy to be angry about it when that's like kind of your MO, is like being obnoxiously seething about all of these people. How many times have you gone on in a video seething about Natalie? This is I mean, if this isn't written from an angry place, I don't know why you'd make it such a put on, because that's absolutely the energy of the video. If you genuinely can't summon the energy to be angry about it, then what I would have done is made a much more, like, I don't know, a much more, like, politically and philosophically motivated video, as opposed to one that is clearly very personally motivated, going on and on in polemics about the personalities that occupy this space, right? I allow myself, for the purposes of response videos or for the purposes of react content, a little polemics directed at personalities. But if you're making a video that is ostensibly meant to be about a concept and then you just snipe at people the whole time, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you're trapped in like a brain death spiral. Horrendous. Horrendous stuff.
It's cancel culture nonsense. See, when all this Buck Angel stuff was happening, ContraPoints ended up doing a Patreon stream that went over the backlash, very dismissively, of course, but what did you expect? And the reason I bring it up is because during the stream, she made the remark that just because trans people were offended when she worked with transphobes wasn't a good enough reason for her to stop. And it's a poignant moment because it's a point where I realized doing another video on ContraPoints' bullshit was kind of ContraPointless. It made it clear that there was nothing to gain from pressing the issue. There were no minds to change, just flag her on Shinigami eyes and move on. But it did make something finally click. Namely, that ContraPoints ultimately was never interested in being a creator who went to bat for trans people. What she wanted to do was pontificate on the academic hypotheticals of political concepts. You know that image you think of when you think of philosophy, of two Roman guys debating like it's a sport while a crowd gathers around them? That's all this is to most of BreadTube. ContraPoints cared about what cishet people think of her and did not care what trans people thought of her.
That doesn't follow from the premise at all. First of all, it's perfectly fair to be a trans content creator and want to occasionally talk about issues relating to being transgender or gender itself or political environments and political, like, philosophical concepts, and then not want to be the trans community's strongest soldier every other day of the week, right? And we treated her like that. We, big air quotes, we. People treated her like that, right? Like, you're trans, you're a content creator, you talk about gender, okay, you're our strongest soldier, go. You know? Like, we're Ash and she's Pikachu, and that's not fair, you know? And maybe there's plenty of things to disagree about under the sun with Natalie, for sure. I'm certain of it. But maybe that's not the point, right? And this idea that, like, oh, she's not interested in being, like, the Pikachu to our Ash. She's not going to fight for us in every battle, so she doesn't care? That's like, you're looking for somebody to, like, ritualistically abuse for not living up to an impossible standard as a content creator, is what this feels like to me. Stop it. We don't, like I said at the beginning, we don't need the 2-minute hate on Natalie, and now it's a 17, near 18-minute hate so far on Natalie and Vosh, mostly. It's mostly what this video is about. This is petty nonsense.
She fundamentally did not.
I was actually expecting something better than this. I don't know why.
And that's why her response to the backlash was so shit. Because she didn't care about mending a rift. She just wanted those little brats to shut up and leave her alone. She'd already decided who she wanted her content to appeal to. And
censoring the word queer there, by the way, in that tweet.
She just wanted those little brats to shut up and leave her alone.
Ready?
She'd already.
There it is.
Decided who she wanted her content to appeal to, and if she wasn't dissuaded by thousands of people ostracizing her and giving her a mountain of headaches, another video from a nobody wasn't going to do that. The fact is, there isn't some secret mystery as to why this wealthy, conventionally attractive white woman is so hostile to criticism. She just doesn't care. She would rather just dress up like she's in a Family Guy skit about gay Dracula and contemplate her navel. And I don't say this with any malice. ContraPoints isn't the first white woman with middling talent.
She's not our tool. She's not our tool, dog. What? I don't. This is weird. This has gotten weirder. I didn't think it was gonna get weirder. Please stop.
Deep self-loathing and an adversarial relationship with criticism, reality, and the concept of other people's existence, and she won't be the last. It is a mundane fact of life, and when you look at her work through this lens, it's a lot harder to be angry with her, because she's just another white girl with bad opinions. But she did get me thinking about who I want my content to appeal to, because I don't want neo-Nazis liking my channel or my writing. I go out of my way to be as hostile to them as possible. Some people whine about this, saying I should be reaching out and helping de-radicalize them, but the fact is,
like, I don't wanna, you know?
I just don't care about conservative white men and their problems, because to be that kind of person, I'd have to be someone that other LGBT people don't feel safe around, and I'd have to be someone that people of color don't feel safe around, and I don't want to be that kind of person. If I'm going to choose between conservative white men or choose LGBT people,
there's a lot going on there.
I'm going to choose the latter. Am I good at that? Not really. I put my foot in my mouth on more than one occasion over my long career. Some people have forgiven me for those instances, some haven't, and I'm okay with people still being upset with me for that. I might not be the kind of creator I want to be right now, but being that kind of creator is the only real professional ambition I have, and I care way more about that than potentially detoxing Nazis. At the end of the day, I'm not a political YouTuber any more than all art is political, but I still care about who my content is appealing to. Anything that might make those groups feel unwelcome in my spaces or around my work is not something I'm okay with. And I have tried to adopt a policy over the last few years that if another marginalized person comes to me with something racist I've done, to not argue with them on that that point because they have a better understanding of the subject than you do, you fucking idiot. I tend to take a hard and fast rule on how to respond when marginalized people confront me with something problematic I've done, unless it is brazenly 100% clear that they're doing so in bad faith. I think if anything, if someone is bringing something you've done to your attention rather than make a clickbait YouTube video about it, that's generally an indication that they already trust you to take it seriously. They already believe it's a sincere mistake. They're already giving you the benefit of the doubt. They wouldn't be talking to you otherwise. And I think that's the only real value that these discussions of breadtube personalities getting in trouble for refusing to check their privilege has. Sit back and think, who do you want feeling welcome around you? Who do you actually care about? And do you care about being a welcoming person, having better politics, or at the very least just not being repugnant? Or do you just want people to declare you one of the good ones without doing any of the actual work? I've always been firmly of the correct opinion that cancel culture isn't real, despite how many white liberals start to adopt the term whenever they get slapped down for being stupid. ContraPoints and Lindsay Ellis weren't canceled for one bad tweet or action. The both of them had been pissing people off with a very distinct callousness for a long time. Hell, Ellis's last big controversy is often said to be about a single tweet that was perceived to be racist, but it wasn't even that. It was the response to being very plainly told why the tweet was racist. Some people came to her in good faith. She called them crazies. And
This rules, by the way. So this is a really interesting thing. Where if somebody says, hey, this thing that you said was problematic, and your response is that you don't see how, like you disagree, that is like further proof that you're problematic. It's like a spiral. It's like magnetic. It's like gravity. It's like the Dark Knight scene with the Joker. The thing about madness is it's like gravity. All you need is a little push, you know? Man. No, I mean, I'm being a little silly here. We're having a little fun, but it's once the ball gets rolling, it's like it can't be stopped. So it's all perception at that point. And you can't live in a world of pure perception. You can't live in your head. I'm sorry. You have to live in the world that the rest of us live in to at least some degree. Because otherwise, why are you making this video? Why are you talking? Go sit alone in your room and think. Have fun. You know?
lashed out, and a larger group of people went, oh, okay, fuck you too, I guess. And it wasn't the first time this had happened. People made a big fuss about the pylon because hundreds of people were making these remarks, but she had far more defenders than she had detractors. And this is the natural consequence of having a huge audience. When you show your ass, more people see it. And this goes double for Natalie. They did not get canceled. They got shouted down, and not for one offense, for many. If I throw out the idea...
Yeah, they didn't get canceled. They did insert thing that they mean when they said getting canceled, right? That's a great little rhetorical trick as well. Cancer culture. Cancel culture isn't real. It's just this other thing that's also a euphemism for the thing that people mean when they say cancel culture. Come on. Put the effort in, you know? Come on.
Idea of Raylo-style fanfiction with Harriet Tubman, I'd expect people to be less patient with me too. Cancel culture isn't real. And when I say that, people get surprised because, unlike these two, I actually have been stalked and harassed and have my reputation slandered by bad faith actors en masse. Like, Lily, how can you not believe cancel culture is real? You've been stalked for a decade, you've had your name put on manuscripts that aren't yours, you've been accused of abuse by your abuser, one former friend has been stalking you for 8 years, you've been assaulted IRL over some of this shit, some crazy bitch is making her 5th video in a row trying to pedo jacket you like a store brand libs of TikTok as we fucking speak. How is this not an attempt to cancel you? Well, it's pretty simple. I don't call this canceling. I call it what it is. Harassment, bullying, stochastic terrorism in the case of the 2 people who raped me over this bullshit. The whole point of cancel culture is that when people are being actually criticized over things they actually did, you will connect that legitimate criticism, shouty and rude as it might be, to those other things. Cancel culture is about blurring the line between criticism and harassment so that when you see the former, you will think it's automatically the latter. You cannot equate 12 years of stalking, abuse, defamation, real-life sexual assault, and very deliberate attempts to ruin someone's life out of spite to being made...
Okay, it's interesting, though, to say that, like, oh, you can't conflate criticism and harassment, but they were getting harassed. Natalie and Lindsay very much did also get harassed. I need you to understand that some people criticize them, but they did also very much get harassed. We saw this happen live. I mean, maybe some of you watching this were not there, but no, the harassment also very much did happen, right? So when people talk about cancellation and they describe it in this kind of nuanced process of how a public figure comes to be viewed as a discourse topic and harassment erupts from this, and it becomes this game of pointing out all of the little your fave is problematic-esque issues with a public figure. That type of thing is what people mean when they say canceling, unless sometimes people in bad faith, the Ben Shapiro's of the world, will say, you know, canceling and what they mean is I was racist and people called me racist. That also happens. But this approach of cancel culture isn't real to me. I mean, you complain about bad faith, but this is not intellectually engaging with what people actually are talking about when they say cancel culture. there is a real thing being described there sometimes. And it's not just random harassment, because it's not random.
Made fun of on Twitter for a week for being fucking stupid. And I've been made fun of on Twitter for being fucking stupid, and I don't count it when I talk about being stalked and terrorized. That's why I don't believe in cancel culture. I don't need to, because I don't view my ego being bruised as an act of psychological assault. This video went in a lot of different places. I just started writing, and a lot of very personal frustrations came out. Hopefully that was intelligible, but knowing me, it probably wasn't. I wasn't prepared for this one winning the poll, honestly. I meant what I said a minute ago. I don't really hold any anger toward terrible creators in LeftTube, not even the ones who have harassed me specifically. It all just kind of bleeds together into a big blinding blob. Like, I don't hate ContraPoints. She's a white woman with terrible opinions about shit. There's a ton of those. While disliking or disavowing creators is valuable, I think there's a lot of harm to yourself when you get emotionally invested in a creator's downfall. Personally, I would love it if a lot of BreadTube checked their own biases, got away from making verbal wrestling matches and drama videos, but I don't see any value in holding my breath. I guess I could suggest lefty YouTubers who I think are more worth watching. Yeah, let's do that.
No, don't give him the kiss of death.
B-sides, direct political theory. It's a mixture on current trends, direct politics, and pop culture. I think he's very good. You might like him. Stitch Media Mix is more centered
FD is pretty chill.
Directly on fandom, K-pop, and fandom racism. But if you're looking to have your biases checked right to the face with a wooden cutting board,
Not
they're very
familiar
helpful
with
to me.
Stitch.
Sometimes I come away from Stitch's articles being made aware of something problematic I've been doing and feeling ashamed of myself. And I think that
that stuff
experience is
out,
more
maybe, I
valuable
don't
than
know.
people give it credit for. Professor Flowers, in particular, she has a very insightful video about the problems of LeftTube trying to recruit Nazis, and I've kept his video in my mind while I was writing parts of this, but all of her other videos are great, and honestly, I think he's just swell. And lastly, Knowing Better. It's a mostly history channel, which YouTube...
Oh, does
really
Professor
loves, but also
Flowers
talks about
use
other-
he, him pronouns now? I must have missed that. I apologize if I misgendered earlier. Not intentional. I wouldn't be able to tell by PF's Twitter what, I guess, his pronouns are. At least pretty confidently using he, him there. I guess. Wouldn't be able to tell. Been blocked for a while. Well, you know, whatever. Who cares? Knowing
issues
Better
like
is
the
pretty good.
capitalist hellhole we're living in, police militarization. It's a left-wing channel that doesn't do class reductionism, which is what I think you should be primarily looking for. All right, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Have a good night. I love you all. Yes, even you in the back, sharpening a knife and glaring at me.
Yeah, this isn't really uncertain. I don't actually know that I think class reductionism is the biggest problem in LeftTube. I don't even know if it's in the top 5. It's an issue. It's an analytical issue for sure. To talk about that in the context of Natalie and Vosh feels super weird. I don't even know that I think that they put forward like class analysis that I think is like crazy strong. It's normal, you know? But I don't know. A little odd. It kind of feels like like a kid learning a new phrase, and now all of a sudden they use it in every conversation. Yeah. FD is generally okay, but not always as thoughtful as he wants to be. You know, it's a wheelhouse issue. Professor Flowers uses he, him, and she, her. Who knows? It was a bigger problem, maybe. I mean, if you guys can confirm or deny that, I appreciate it. It was a bigger problem maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I think it depends on who you're talking about. Like, you'd have to be so much more specific, because like there is a form of class reductionism that goes on with like the PATSOCs, patriotic socialists. You know, I don't even know if they're calling themselves that anymore. But there's a handful of left-wing content creators who are for sure. PF's Twitter says he, him, or she, her. Okay, good. All right. Well, that's fair. You know, thank you. I appreciate you checking that. Tankies are where a lot of the class reductionists come from. Kind of, but not kind of, but like I think it's incidental. Because like, man, people really don't say Othcom anymore. But like big air quotes like tankies, like MAGA communists. Yeah, those people are class reductionists because they are actually racist, and they disguise the racism with class. Very weak, by the way, class analysis, and that, to my eyes, is really the function of class reductionism rhetorically. A lot of the other stuff, I don't know. I mean, a lot of the big ones. I mean, like you could say like Caleb Maupin, Angie Speaks, Peter Coffin, some of those people maybe, but a lot of the big ones, Vosh and Natalie, I don't really think so. And people who get called tankies a lot of the time, right? Like, a lot of them invoke race pretty hard, right? They're not exactly class reductionist, most of them. But obviously a subset, you get like the MAGA communists. I don't really use the term tanky anymore. It describes a real thing, but it's one of those words that people hear you say it and their brain just turns off. Anyway, that video was absolute madness. I've taken 2d12 psychic damage. I will not survive the next play session.